This year has sucked. You remember at the beginning of the year when David Bowie died and we were all joking how much this year sucked and we had no idea. No idea. I know that on this channel I generally keep it to media related stuff, and even then it's mostly theory, and I know we're all kind of doing a little bit of soul searching right now, and right now I know, we're all kind of ranging from stressed to pants-shittingly terrified, and this is not made awesome by the fact that Thanksgiving is coming up, and a lot of people are not looking forward to spending time with their families. Fortunately, my family's pretty cool, so this is, of my many worries, that this isn't one of them. But in, my pants-shitting terror, part of what I've been doing is going to community meetings and rallies, learning coping strategies and also organization strategies going forward. And so I wanted to share some of the stuff I have learned, hoping that it might help you not only better deal with your family, but also help begin the process of healing the divide, politically speaking. Like, these are scary times, but with the exception of the extreme right, the literal Nazis and the massive assholes, most people, I think, are still receptive to change. And I think a lot of us young white people on the more progressive side have really dropped the ball in terms of hermetically sealing ourselves into this bubble of everyone agrees with us, and we have avoided having some difficult conversations. So first of all, your mileage may vary, these are just suggestions, but while enduring family members that might be smug or don't want to talk about it or might be really insensitive to your feelings, think in the long term. While it is possible that we might be headed into fascist America in World War III, let's assume that we're not, and that the best thing we can do when we spend time with our families is getting them to be concerned with the plight of people who are not them. And this is really difficult, and I think whenever you're talking to your family, you need to keep this at the back of your mind, that humans are naturally, just innately, really, really tribal. And lately, the tribe has become political, as well as racial. And this has been what motivated a lot of voters, especially Trump voters. They see the world in terms of us versus them. So try to think in terms of long-term strategies, both in introducing your families to ideas that they might not have considered, and also to help preserve your long-term relationship. If you are feeling up to having a dialogue, come in with an objective, and do not come in to argue or to trap them. You will fail and you will change no minds or perspectives. The most important thing to remember when engaging in any dialogue is you have no influence over someone for whom you show an underlying contempt. And this applies both ways. Think of how you feel whenever someone is dismissive of your opinion. So remember, if your plan is to change minds in the long run, you need to leave the contempt at home. And if you can't do that, you're not gonna help anything, and it's probably best just to keep your mouth shut. Secondly, do not expect immediate results. These things take time. Right now, what you need to be focusing on is instead introducing them to new ideas and empathizing with how you feel. Change in perspective absolutely does happen. Look at support for the Iraq War since 2003. People do change their minds, but these things do take time. Be patient. This might seem obvious, but do not yell. Third, do not appeal to facts. People don't care. What you should instead be appealing to is their sense of empathy. It does not matter how backed up by empirical study you are and how backed up they are solely by whatever Facebook meme they shared. You insisting how right you are is not going to change anyone's mind, so don't focus on trying to persuade people with facts. They don't care. Getting people to see outside of their own sphere is a difficult, painful process, and it is absolutely possible. But again, these things do take time. Right now, the best you can hope for is to introduce them to these concepts, like, I'm worried about the literal Nazis. Shaming does not work. Do not frame any dialogue in terms of, look at what you did. Do not blame people. Do not say, this is your fault, no matter how much you might be feeling that. That's not gonna help anything in the long term. Also, listen. No matter how terrible and loathsome your relatives' ideas might be on, say, race or gender, Try and listen to them and try to understand the basis for their concerns. You can't expect them to listen to you if you will not afford them the same courtesy. Again, do not appeal to people's logic. Frame things rather in empathetic terms. If this is your family, they should be able to feel empathy with you and your concerns. Try to make your concerns as subjective as you can. Instead of talking obliquely about groups you are afraid for or freedoms you are afraid you might lose, try to keep things very specific. For instance, if you had a friend who was harassed by a white supremacist in the wake of the election, try to keep your sphere as small as possible whenever you're expressing your concerns. That makes them a lot more difficult to dismiss if you can make them subjective and about you or people you know. Do not deny the importance of their perceived issues. Unless their issues are literal white supremacy, in which case they're a lost cause, don't bother. Try to find some common ground. Don't play into their narrative that you are the one who doesn't listen. If you have a gloater in the family, someone who is going to come in spoiling for a fight and so happy about your liberal tears, do not let them rile you up. Their empathy is at about a 0 right now. The best you can hope for is to reignite their sense of empathy. Again, humans are tribal. You might be in a different tribe politically, but you're still in the same tribe familially. Is that a word? If this gloater is not a lost cause, try to appeal to their common human empathy. Try to get them not to see you as a political rival, but as a family member who is deeply scared and concerned for the way the country is going, for the spike in hate crimes, for their friends who might be losing their rights or who might themselves be victims of hate crimes. Do not be afraid to frame things in terms of, you're hurting me when you say things like this. If they try to rile you up, don't get angry. Tell them that it hurts you. They need to see that there is a real human cost to being so insensitive. You do not owe it to your family to hide your concern, your anger, your fear. You do not owe it to them to make them feel comfortable. And you don't have to sugarcoat it. You don't owe it to them right now. And if you are not yet at a place where you think you can talk about these issues, and I know emotions are still really raw and there are a lot of you who can't, then you need to be focusing on your self-care and maybe worry about changing minds later. First of all, and I'm gonna go ahead and use this term, make sure you have a safe space in whatever house you are in that you can go and hide whenever you feel overwhelmed. Go out to the woods, go to the bathroom. Your family can't tell you you can't go to the bathroom if someone has said something that has upset you or if a subject has broached that you do not want to hear. Secondly, have a phone a friend. Coordinate with someone ahead of time that you can text or call in case you feel overwhelmed, someone that you can vent at. And again, you do not owe it to your family if they are being shitty to you right now to make them feel comfortable. You can protest silently. You do not have to explain your grievances to them, but you also do not owe it to them to make them feel okay with the way things are going. If they don't respect your feelings, you can cut and run. If you can't cut and run, you can hide until you can. It is really scary right now that we are basically having to protect ourselves from our own families, but we also need to be thinking in the long term to hopefully maybe this will not always be the case. And part of that is both sides breaking out of their hermetically sealed bubble and trying to find some common ground. Fighting the literal Nazis might be a good one. Hey Mom, I'm really worried about the literal Nazis. Like, they call themselves that. Don't call them alt-right, they're Nazis. And the most important thing to consider is stress makes time feel expanded. It's part of the human brain's process of taking in all of this god-awful new horror we are exposed to every day. So do not forget to take care of yourself. If you feel overwhelmed by all the horrors of the world, you're not helping anyone by letting yourself get ground down until you are basically incapable of doing any action. Take care of yourself. This is gonna be a really long slog. And part of that long slog is not cutting off half the country, especially white people. If you have friends and families who are moderate or wishy-washy, or even on the conservative side, but at least give a shit about you, try to get them to listen and empathize with your concerns, and also listen to them. You have no influence over anyone for whom you show an underlying contempt, and the same flies both ways. There is no one solution to this, and part of the process of the next few years is going to be strategizing and organizing and figuring out what to do. And the most important thing that you need to remember is that you are not alone. Even if you are alone within your own family, we are all terrified. We in the United States are terrified, and the rest of the world is shitting their pants too. We're all scared. This is a really stressful time. If you are having a difficult time managing your stress, you're not alone. And if you need some time to cope, that is okay. And if now is not the time to talk to your conservative Trumpy family, that's okay too. That time can come later. Right now, you need to take care of yourself first, because we are going to need a lot of strength in the coming months and years. Happy Thanksgiving!